Dr. Dymerski has a diverse technical background with a PhD in the sciences and has founded, managed, and raised capital for several technological companies and consulted for many others. As CEO of CAL Lab Incorporated, Dr. Dymerski raised $2 million in private capital to fund his own independent pharmaceutical environmental laboratory. After this venture was sold, he went on to found, lead, or partner in a number of software and technology ventures, bringing cutting-edge products to numerous markets. In 2000, he joined Tech Columbus Incubator Biotechnology Venture, Visual Genomics, as president, and attracted the initial round of investment capital. He has experience working in marketing to both small and large companies, as well as government agencies. Currently, he's CEO of Applied Biomolecular Technologies and an executive mentor at the OSU Fisher College Business Center for Entrepreneurship. And I'll also add in that just last week, the group that he mentored won the student business plan competition at Fisher College. So I think he's the best person to tell us what it takes to be an entrepreneur.
And by the way, the technology that we built our business plan around was Alicia's technology. So hopefully she'll be joining us as we create this startup called Genanosis. We got last Friday, took first place in Fisher Businessman competition. We got $80,000 in funding from that competition to start our company. Now, I was in a panel discussion a few weeks ago, and some of you might have been there. I think the title was, "What do I do with my PhD?" And we had a really good discussion with a lot of students, people from industry, and myself as an entrepreneur. And I know one of the comments we got back from that was that people wish there was more time for questions and answers. So if you were in that group and you have some general questions about job hunting in your career, when we get through with this, feel free to ask. I worked with state government, I've worked with large corporations, Roche Pharmaceutical, and I've worked with medium-sized as well as startups. So, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk about anything you want. This title here, Anatomy of an Entrepreneur, I actually lifted from a recent report by the Kauffman Foundation that I was looking through. I figured since I was going to talk to a bunch of engineers, I should have some real numbers to back up what I'm talking about. And in their report, they did a lot of stats, and they titled their report this. So I said, it's a great title. So, the nice thing about an entrepreneur is you can steal somebody's idea and do it. Basically, what I want to talk about here, since we're talking about what it is to be an entrepreneur, is what are you going to do when you get out of here? How many of you are going to graduate this quarter? Okay, so nobody's going to graduate. And how many of you are PhD candidates? Okay, and how many are masters, bachelors? All the rest, okay? So you really have some decisions you got to make now before you graduate. And you really have some choices. So one of them, I understand, a talk was given a few weeks ago about the academic side of things. And so one of your decisions is, do you really want to secure an academic position and go into basic research? How many of you have that in mind? That's your goal when you graduate, what you want to do with your career? 2, 3, okay, and not real sure about it, okay. How many want to do a high corporate R&D job? That's your goal. Okay, a little more enthusiastic about it. I like that. And some of you aren't decided. All right. And how about this? You want to chuck the security and the income. You want to start a high-risk venture. We have a 10% chance of actually making any return at all in about 5 to 8 years. Who wants to do that? Okay, I actually have some people who want to do that. You may be an entrepreneur. Because that's what people think about entrepreneurship and what it is to be an entrepreneur. That you go out, you start this high-risk venture, and at someplace along the line, you make lots of money. And we know that because of Mark Zuckerberg, right? How many of you saw Mark on The Social Network? Saw that movie? Yeah, pretty interesting. Maybe you want to go home and start writing code or creating some kind of medical device or something, right? You don't need to know anything about business. You don't need to know anything about finances. You just got a great idea and you're going to do it. And that's unfortunate, I think, that that's the way the movie was presented. And that's the way a lot of people think about entrepreneurship. you hear about these few really big successes, like the Googles and the Facebooks, and particularly with Mark. What did he do? He started out, he was a total introvert, which all of us science people are, right? The last thing we want to do is actually get up in front of people. It's not our personalities, otherwise we'd be salesmen, and we'd be over in the marketing program. And he took this idea and he went for it and just happened to find the right people on his team to help him build what he wanted when he needed it done. He found the right marketing guy that could go out and sell his idea. He found, and all of a sudden this guy walked in with millions of dollars who heard about him and gave him all the money he wanted. Well, it works maybe one time in a couple 100,000. I won't even say one time in a million. But it doesn't typically work. Typically entrepreneurship is very different. It's working for a long time. It's something you really love for your own personal reasons, and you may make money, and that's of course one of your goals, but it's not going out and thinking you're going to be a billionaire in a couple years. It'll lead to be a very frustrated entrepreneur if you try to do that. So I looked at the Kauffman Foundation and I looked through some of the statistics and I pulled out a few things that I thought were interesting, at least to me. Hopefully they'll be interesting to you. And I thought I'd go through them here and see what we can find about what it's like to be an entrepreneur. What really surprised me, and I put it up on the top here, the average and median age of founders when they start their companies is 40. You think and hear a lot about college students, even undergrads, starting companies by the time they graduate. If they even bother to graduate, they've already got these ongoing ventures that are doing really well. And that surprised me that it's a little bit older than you think. 69.9% were married when they started their first business. Now this survey here is done with mostly technology, but also some non-technology entrepreneurs. So you have to take into account, I believe there was like 450 some people they surveyed. This is a very good point if you're going to be an entrepreneur. Unless you like to live in destitution, you really want to be married if you're an entrepreneur. To have a spouse or a partner that has a nice steady income, who likes to work and has all the health benefits, believe me, that's a real big requirement for trying to go out on your own. Even if you're not going to start your own company, even joining a startup venture, because you really don't know when your next paycheck is going to come in, or if you're going to have to give it back the next month in order to make payroll. And I have to tell you, my wife has supported me. I've been an entrepreneur for over 25 years, and my wife has supported me in every move I've made. Your income goes zero, then it jumps up when you finally start getting your paycheck, and you get a big bunch of equity if you sell your company. And then if you're a real entrepreneur, you do it over again, and you start back at zero. Let's see, it says here 59.7% of the respondents had at least one child and 43.5% had two or more. That surprised me. It's very hard, the older you get, to start a company, to go out on your own. Now, a lot of people, some people will do it when they have lost their jobs and they're middle age and they can't find a new job. But doing it out of choice is difficult because it takes a lot of time and a lot of concentration, and literally an entrepreneur is like you are right now when you're doing research. It's more than just a 40-hour week. It's whatever you have to do in order to get the job done. And that's one thing I think that college graduates in particular, but I think the master's and PhD candidates, you have a good mentality for being an entrepreneur because you've been through this cycle of working and working and working. Right? And that's the way it is when you have a startup. When you don't know where your next job is coming from, you work. That's all you can do. And you can look for the next client, and you do the next improvement on your product to try to get that next round of investment or that next round of clients. And it's a cycle that very few people are used to, but I have found people who have advanced degrees, you get it. You know what's involved in doing that. And you're not going to go in and all of a sudden be taken by surprise how hard it really is to be an entrepreneur. 74.8% desire to build wealth as an important motivation. And that's very important. That's why I became an entrepreneur. 2 reasons. One is I don't like to take orders. And I quit a job at the New York State Health Department because my advisor told me to do something I didn't want to do. So I got up and I quit. I didn't have another job in sight, but I wasn't going to do it because he told me to do it. The whole idea of becoming a social entrepreneur and doing entrepreneurship to save humanity or help people is a very new idea in entrepreneurship. It's only a couple years old, yet you hear a lot about it these days. Most people have started their companies because they want to make money. And my feeling was when I got into it after I did my first venture, and then I had the opportunity to go get a real job or to start another company, my feeling was once I got a job and I knew what I was going to be paid and where I was going to go for the rest of my life, I was done. There was nothing interesting in, say, joining a pharmaceutical company and just being a research chemist for 30 years. I didn't want to do it. The idea of having the potential to do better or to do, something totally different was what really interested me. It's a little bit of a risk. It's almost like being a gambler, but you're gambling in a different way. So you have to also keep that under control, because sometimes entrepreneurs, you'll find they'll get into anything just because it's new and different. And you have to make sure you're not that kind of gambling personality. You can get yourself in a lot of trouble. In fact, I have an entrepreneur friend who has never seen a bad startup. He's willing to get into it no matter what it is, and that's very dangerous thing to do. Let's see, 4.5%, and I say I put only in there in parentheses because I think that's really low, said the inability to find additional employment was an important factor. Right? So even though these people are in their 40s and when they're starting their companies, they're not doing it because they were laid off or fired and can't find another job. Or maybe they just don't want to admit that. I haven't figured that one out yet. And 75% of them previously worked for over 6 years. And that's an important thing. The hard part about being an entrepreneur, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, is you're constantly getting taken advantage of. If you don't know something or you don't understand it, there will be someone out there who will take you to the cleaners if they can. Whether it's an investor or a lawyer or a customer, they'll do it. They're savvy business people, and you're in it. I started out, which Anisha said, in sciences. My PhD was in chemistry. I knew nothing about business when I got into business. I knew nothing about company politics. And my first venture, man, I just felt like I was raked over the coals by the lawyers. I had no idea what they were talking about, and I, signed stuff I probably shouldn't have signed. And things worked out in the end, but I sure wish I had known more about it. So then they came up with this chart, which I thought was interesting. And for some reason they put the kind of increasing experience in education, but postdocs are less educated than PhDs for some reason, according to this researcher. I thought that was interesting. I think what it points out here is that a lot of people, about half of them, only have their bachelor's degree and get into entrepreneurship. But you can see there's a pretty big spike up there with PhDs. I think that's because these are involve non-technology companies also. I can tell you, if you start talking about engineering companies, aerospace companies, most advanced software companies, biotechnology companies, the majority of the senior people and the founders are PhDs. Because you have to understand it before you know how to sell it. And that's a very important point. And if you don't understand it, you need the PhD to be able to learn it and figure it out. I've gotten into areas that I knew nothing about. I can tell you 5 years ago, I knew nothing about biotechnology. We're in actually biopharmaceuticals. I knew nothing about it. I still don't know nearly as much as my PhDs or former Patel researchers. But I've mastered enough to be able to market our product and understand when we're taking a risk and what the capabilities of our technology is. Let's see. How interested were you in becoming an entrepreneur while you're completing your education? This is a good one. This says that I would say more than half the people never thought about it. before you walked into this room,